So if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Maybe leave us a comment with who you thought had the best race. But certainly one of the best races is Alex Palou because he wins, and he wins in pretty dominant fashion. I think it took him about half the race, 2 stops to establish himself, but it just seemed like he had superior strategy, superior pace, and when it came down to it, he was just on a completely different planet.
Started on sticker reds, had the lead by the end of the first lap. So I wouldn't say, like you said, he didn't establish himself until probably after the second stop, but went ripping right to the lead on the reds and stretched it out. I think he opened up a 5-second lead or whatever before his tires started to go a little bit. But so he looked good right off the bat, and came out of the pits after his third stop way ahead and stretched it out and was just basically untouchable. Kind of reminded me of at the end of last year at Laguna when he came out. I think he started the race 14th, so a little bit different scenario, but just dusted everybody.
Yeah.
And he might have won that race by 30 seconds, and he probably could have won this race by 30 seconds. He sort of got stuck in lap traffic and decided probably wasn't worth it to pass and didn't need to. So still ends up winning the race by, 16 seconds.
Yeah.
So, and we just don't see that very much in IndyCar.
Yeah.
So a class of his own.
Pretty remarkable. So Award finishes in second behind him. Also kind of took a little while to establish himself. He was I think in 5th for a while early in this race and behind both of his teammates, and I think really made the move to the front with the big undercut on the second stop, but then had great pace from there on out.
Yeah, started on blacks, and again, I think a little handcuff there, so unable to go to the lead, but settled into 5th, and ended up closing really strong on his last couple stints. So.
Yeah, and Rossi finishes 3rd. He was another guy that started on the reds, which like Palou did, I think that was probably the better strategy. But he had a lightning fast start and was kind of duking it out for most of this race to wind up in that last podium spot.
Yeah, he went from 10th to 3rd pretty quick. I mean, after that first restart on lap 5, he jumped into 3rd. He was the beneficiary, I guess, of Rahal and Dixon both having issues on turn 1. They were on reds also, so didn't have to dispatch them, but dispatched everybody else except for Palou and Lundgaard. So, great race for Rossi.
Yeah, and really a good race for Lundgaard too, who comes home in 4th. I think that first IndyCar win is going to come, particularly if Rahal can continue to build on this momentum, if Team Rahal can build on the momentum. But I think that I just don't think they really got the strategy right. We've talked extensively about starting on the blacks. I also think maybe going to the reds for his 3rd stint, right after the second round of stops may not have been the best call. And he also makes his last stop early and probably has to save. Well, actually, definitely we saw it on TV. Definitely has to save a little bit on the last stint too. So he was a little handcuffed by strategy, but there's no doubt he had a lot of pace this weekend. And to finish 4th for the Rahal team, who's been struggling to get a result of any kind, I think is still something to be proud of. I
would say he had an excellent race, and he was, I wrote down everybody's tire stint selection, and the winner was red, then blacks the rest of the way. And again, we can't tell if they're scuffed or if they're sticker. I mean, we know Palou's last set was sticker because they said it on TV. But so he's red, black, black, black. Lundgaard starts on black, does 2 red stints and then a black. I mean, some other guys had 3 stints on reds. And so you're sort of, what we can't tell, there's a fixed number of sets you're allowed for the weekend. We just can't tell who's used what up in practice and qualifying. I guess unless you're sitting there in pit lane and counting tires, you sort of don't know. So maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe he had to use 2 sets of reds because they'd used their blacks up thinking that the reds were what they wanted to save. And so it's tough to, you're sort of handcuffed in your pre-race strategy based on what you've already done that weekend. And again, as a fan, I can't really tell who's got what remaining. And so maybe he didn't have a choice. Anyway, great race for him. Ends up in 4th, and great race for Rahal, Lanigan, Letterman. They needed that, and so yeah, hopefully they can build on that.
Yeah, so Rosenquist comes home in 5th, and I actually seemed pretty cheerful in his post-race interview, but I would think that running so well, qualifying so well, but then ultimately finishing behind both of your teammates has got to eat away at you a little bit, especially for a guy who's probably driving for a contract next year.
He started on the front row, and you could see from the in-cars, he just was, he got stuck a little bit on the timing. Lundgaard gunned it, and Rosenquist was whatever, I mean, you know how it is in karts or cars, whatever. If the revs are winding down because you tried it a second before, you can't just immediately snap your fingers and be going, right? So he just sort of was stuck there and lost a couple spots right at the start. And then, at one point he was running, I guess he never really dropped below 4th. Or no, he was 5th, I'm sorry, 5th at the start. But you don't want to get beat by your teammates, but I think that he still had an excellent race, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he's 5th.
Yep, Dixon is 6th, which is only 3 spots up from where he started, but he was 16th when we restarted after lap 4. So that was, that was a full race run by Dixon to get all the way up there.
Yeah, he started the race on reds, and so would have been in good shape there. I think they were stickers, I forget, from the grid walk, but probably would have had a really good first stint. We'll never know because he got backed up, right? So ended up back in 16th, like you said, but great recovery. And, had he not had that problem at the beginning, maybe could have challenged Palou. I don't know. Nobody else could. I don't know if he could have. I doubt he could have, but whatever. He's 6th. Newgarden in 7th.
Yeah, he started on the reds and made up the bulk of his positions on the first lap. He went all the way up to 8th from starting 13th. And then I would say was solidly between 6th and 8th for most of the race. Ultimately winds up 7th after passing Herta with just like 3 laps to go or something.
Yeah, he got overcut by Dixon at the end. I was trying to figure out how Dixon got ahead of him, but overcut on the last stop by Dixon. He used red and then black, which Palou did. That was, I guess, the preferred strategy. So, yeah, good recovery there. Ericsson, 8th place. I would say a little bit quiet. I don't know, on the first corner, when the whole Kirkwood Rahal thing was happening, he'd made contact left side with Kirkwood, might have touched Rahal a little bit too. So it didn't look like a very hard hit. It might have thrown something off millimeters, I don't know. But just didn't seem to have the pace that I was going to expect him to have. But all that said, he still ends up 8th. So
yeah,
not a bad race. I just expect him to contend a little more.
Yep. And then behind him is Herta, who was 5th when he came out of the pits on the last stop. Drops all the way back to 9th and actually winds up finishing. I think Ericsson's a good 7 seconds clear of him after just having passed him a lap before when he crosses the line. So I mean, he was just hanging on for dear life on those tires at the end of this thing.
He did 3 stints on the reds. So again, I don't know what happened earlier in the weekend, why they decided to go that way, but yeah, he definitely paid with tire wear.
So Rahal finishes 10th. Talked about his unique strategy. It was 4 stops on paper, but really a 2-stop race because he only made 2 after the yellow on lap 4. Or you could say it was a 3, but he made a super early 3-stop race. Or sorry, super early first stop. Spent most of the race in massive fuel save, and I think 10th is actually a pretty good, pretty strong finish.
Especially when you compare it to the other results they've had this season. So, yeah, not bad. Grosjean, pretty busy race, ends up at 11th, not too bad after starting 18th. It's kind of interesting. He spent a lot of time running right with and around McLaughlin. Those guys have spent a lot of time together this year, mostly at the front. So, he had a busy race. Also used 3 stints on the blacks, but ends up only 11th. Power rallies to 12th.
Yeah.
and really looked strong, the second half of the race. I mean, after being relegated basically to last. So, he started 12th, finished 12th, but there was a lot going on in between.
Yeah, and then VK finishes 13th. He had a really strong start. He was all the way up to 12th from starting 18th. And I still think 13th is actually a great finish, all things considered. He was one of the guys that made his second stop early. He came in on lap 33 and then had to do 2 26-lap stints after that to get to the end of the race. So there is a part of me that thinks that there may have been a little bit more pace in that car than 13th. But I still think 13th is good, all things considered.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the first stop again. You mentioned the last 2 stops, but coming in off the blacks on lap 12, just a little bit of impatience, I think, out of the team, unless he had an issue with this, but probably could have stuck that out, another 5, 6, probably another 10 laps actually, that would have paid dividends at the end.
Yep. So Kirkwood finishes 14th. He had to drop all the way back behind Power after that incident, and just didn't really have as much pace as Power. Power drove away from him. Yeah,
Kirkwood started 6th. Had a great starting spot. Started on the blacks, which in hindsight was probably a mistake, so he got gobbled up a little bit. And then on the restart, we talked about the contact. We didn't talk about the penalty. It was tough. I think it was a tough call because, Kirkwood, Power comes in and passes both Kirkwood and DeFrancesco on that long run. Kirkwood doesn't expect him there. I was watching his in-car. He kind of turns in and then sees Power there. Straightens the wheel a little bit, gives Power plenty of room, but I guess Power with the late break, early apex, maybe he couldn't have held it any tighter, but he drifts wide at the exit, doesn't leave any room for Kirkwood, pushes them all 4 off the track.
Yeah.
So Kirkwood's all 4 tires off the track. What's he supposed to do? He's got to get back onto the asphalt.
Yeah.
And so when he does it, he touches Power, and I guess he could have avoided it by staying in the grass a little longer, but the track's coming back to him. That left-hander is going to stick him right on the track one way or another.
Yeah.
I would have called that a racing incident. I think it was a little bit of a tough call, considering he was the one who got pushed off the track to begin with. And it wasn't a dive bomb. I mean, Power had it, but he did pass 2 guys in one shot.
Yeah.
So, anyway, unable to recover from having to drop to essentially dead last, and ends up, what was that? 14th. Okay.
Yeah. So Armstrong finishes 15th, and again, I actually had in my notes that he came in way too early for his second stop on lap 31. But like you've been saying, that really started by getting off the blacks on the first stop so early. He came in on lap 13. He only did 13 laps on his opening stint on black tires, and then. So after he makes his second stop on lap 31, he does a 28-lap stint, which is about as long as we've seen anybody go all day. Was definitely doing a lot of fuel saving, and then another 26-lap stint after that, which required fuel saving as well.
Yeah, I expected a little more. I just thought in the Ganassi and his practice times were really good. And we may have seen more, if, for whatever reason they made that stop. We'll never know why, but he did learn a lot, right? He had to go through some massive fuel and tire saving and try to hold position. So, pretty good experience for him, I'm sure. I probably wish he would have been a little higher up the order.
Yeah.
But, not bad. He's on the lead lap.
Yeah, and I think they had to do some fuel and tire save in Long Beach also, so he's probably sick of these fuel tire save races and wants to just let it rip. But he'll get his chance. But so McLaughlin finishes 16th, which is actually where he started. But again, pitted on the last lap from 11th. We don't know why. I assume fuel related, although he only had to do 25 laps on that last stint, so he should have been able to make it. Yeah, he
was running, like I said before, running with Grosjean a lot early. He actually went red to start the race. And so he ended up coming in for his second stop. Was it the second one? Wait. Yeah, he ends up coming in for his second stop pretty early, lap 36. And I think it was just a tire thing, red. So he probably had to do a lot of fuel save, and then maybe he was running out at the end. I don't know, that last stop. But he was busy, kind of got checked up on that first turn incident, jostled a little bit at turn 7 on the first lap, had that bent wing that had to be repaired. So, yeah, he had a pretty much the whole race in mid-pack, dicing it up.
Yep. DeFrancesco 17th. He ran really well at the beginning of this race, actually. I think around 12th or 13th, and he had a very similar paint scheme to Grosjean, which I actually got confused a couple times because didn't really expect him to be as far ahead of Grosjean as he was at that point in the race.
Yeah, I have DeFrancesco run up as high as 10th on the first stint, and then he went to the Reds. He started on the blacks, went to the Reds. So yeah, I thought he was going to end up with a little bit better result at the middle of the race. I remember talking to you about saying that I thought DeFrancesco was actually having a great race, but and he did. He had a good race, but he ends up all the way back in 17th. It's just tough.
Yeah, I think he just torched the red tires on the second stint right before his second stop because he got pretty massively. I don't remember overcut, undercut, what, but he went from 11th to 16th on that in that pit stop window. Ilott finishes 18th. Ilott, truthfully, kind of looked like a dog at the beginning of this race. He just didn't seem to have a ton of pace on the opening stint, but he turned it around and wound up 6 spots ahead of where he started.
Yeah, he started on the Reds and started near the back. I'm not sure what happened there in qualifying. I would have expected a little bit more, but it seemed like he must have had a slow stop. I guess I didn't look at the times because he comes out on black tires, but he's dead last.
Yeah.
So there must have been something that happened that we didn't see that relegated him all the way back there, but he clawed his way back up to 18th.
Yeah, and Daly hung around in 19th all day. Well, not all day, but he finishes in 19th.
So Daly, yeah, he does run us, he cycles up to the top half of the field a couple times on pit and tire strategy, but is back half most of the race. Harvey ends up in 20th, which is a big bummer considering he started in 4th and had such high hopes for a great finish. His teammates both had pretty good races, but man, that flat spot in turn 1 on the restart must have really hurt him. And then so he came in and got off the blacks. We've already talked about it. Gets off of them early and has that spin, and next thing you know, man, he's the back.
Yeah, he had just about everything you don't want to have happen, barring a DNF. He had the big lockup, obviously. He had pretty heavy tire deg. He had the spin. I think because of the heavy tire deg and the lockup, he had to come in to the pits pretty early and had to do more fuel save than everybody else. So it's a really tough race.
Canapino, 21st, after starting 25th. I thought he had a really good race. The first half of the race, he looked really racy. I forget how high up the order he got. I actually thought he was going to maybe finish, a little higher than 21st. And he just didn't seem to have the pace at the end. But, he ran most of the race in front of his teammate. And I have him as high. I don't know. You got anything?
Well, he also almost led a lap at one point, I think.
He could have.
I think had he waited one more lap to make his second stop, he would have been scored as the leader of the race.
Where are we here?
So yeah, Canapino also, he almost led a lap in this race. He was almost scored as the leader right before making his first stop. On lap 22, he's in 5th, but ahead of him, O'Ward and Rosenquist are in the pits on that lap. So the only cars ahead of him on track are Ericsson and Dixon. And Ericsson and Dixon both come in on the very next lap. So and Canapino follows him in. Had he waited one more lap to pit, he would have been scored as the leader, which would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, so he was on the black tires and, stretched him out. And I guess he ended up coming in. That was lap 23. Maybe he just didn't have the fuel. But I remember, we were sitting there like, man, he should just stay out. He's going to have the lead for this lap. But I'm sure they probably would have if they could have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was looking really good early, especially after, he set himself up well, making the blacks last on that first stint. And, with good pace. So, yep. And then he beats Castroneves. Helios starts 26th, ends up 22nd. Just didn't really, I don't know what was going on there. Just, didn't seem to have the pace. made an early stop to get off of the black tires. Let's see, yeah, he started on the blacks, got off them early, and just that wasn't the way to go.
Yeah.
Ferrucci in 23rd had a great first half of the race. I mean, he started on reds, he went to reds after the first stop, so I guess he, was sort of setting himself up for 2 long stints after that. But he was running great. And then on the final stop, I don't know what was going on. He was just sitting in the pits there for like 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah.
A wheel nut, I guess.
Yeah, and he winds up 5 laps down. So I think he probably would have wound up, I don't remember where exactly, like 18th, 19th, something like that. But instead, 5 laps down in 23rd, just ahead of Peterson, who started the race with some sort of electrical issue and had to come into the pits as the field was rolling to the green. So he started the race 5 laps down essentially, and it's just kind of, there's not a whole lot you can do except hope other people drop out.
No, but he was on pace all day, and he didn't get anybody's way, and, got some more miles under his belt, but yeah, that's a bummer.
So that brings us to the DNFs then, which are Pagano 25th, Malukas 26th, Stingray Robb 27th.
Yeah, not much to say there. Pagano, I don't know what happened. He was stuck at the end of the pits. I think on TV they said he might have cross-threaded a wheel nut also or something.
Yeah, you could see the wheel nut pop off actually while he was rolling out down the pit lane again.
And then Malukas and Stingray had that issue on lap 2. So that wraps that up.
Yep. So I don't know if we want to talk about the points. We should probably at least mention that Palou, with the win, he got a total of 53 points this weekend with